Okay. Good evening to everyone present here. Welcome to the fourth Roundtable Conference by Equinox 2022. I'm Harshita and I'll be your host. The growth of e-commerce around the world is unstoppable, with double or even triple-digit growth seen annually since its emergence. The bookselling, publishing, and writing were few of the industries which were severely affected by this rapid growth. Today, we have with us an incredible panel of authors to share their thoughts on how the state of bookselling has transformed by the rise of e commerce and how this paradigm shift in business is influencing writing and publishing. Let me begin by introducing our spectacular panel. We have with us Miss Shobha Nihalani, author of the successful books The Silent Monument and The Blue Jade. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Vibha Soni, author of several academic books, including IoT for Beginners and the ebook Strategic Framework to Write Any Book. Hello, ma'am. Welcome. Glad to have you with us. Ma'am, you're on mute currently.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hello, ma'am. And next, we have with us Mr. Gaurav Singh. He's the author of Chaotically Organized and She Just Left. Honored to have you here, sir. You're on mute as well. Okay, sir. Next, we have with us Ms. Nidhi Dugar, author of The Lost Generation and White as Milk and Rice. Nice to
Hi.
meet you, ma'am.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
And up next, we have Mr. Avalok Langer, author of In Pursuit of Conflict. Glad to have you on board with us, sir.
Hi, nice to be here.
And last, but certainly not the least, we have Ms. Richa Kumari, author of Those Fallen Breadcrumbs. Welcome to the roundtable, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Um, so let's start with the first question. The first question I would like to ask is, what inspired you all to become an author? Let's start with Ms. Shobha, ma'am.
Well, for me, it's been because I love reading books. So I've always aspired to be a writer. When I read books and I notice how the authors build stories and create such amazing, worlds inside books, I aspired to be that. I wanted to be a writer like that. So that I didn't have the confidence, but then I became a freelance writer. And then from there, I switched to creative writing, learned the techniques of writing fiction. And then I gained the confidence to write my first book. And it's been 11 books now, 25 years of writing.
Inspired me to write a book. Harshita, are you there? Okay. Okay. Can I continue? Should. Okay. Okay. Harshita is back.
Mute.
You're mute.
I'm so sorry, I had some internet issues. Avalok, sir, would you like to answer? What inspired you to become an author?
Okay.
I think Vibha was just starting. Why don't you continue, Vibha, and I'll wait.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. The two things inspired me. The first one, my first book that I have co-authored, that was a failure for me, but I received the appreciation from my family that you are the one person, and we know that in future, like there would be no one who will do this. So that appreciation and the expectations made me to inspire to turn this failure to the success. And after some years, anyhow, I lost the touch that lost that we should have to continue or not. But in 2022, I realized that no, we have the dreams. I had the dreams to write and publish the book. So I started working on it. And the recent experience of the last 5 years in the content development and the technical books helped me to get the title of author. And in the 2 years, I have already published the 4 book, and it is all started only now. Let's see what will happen in the future. So these are the inspiration to start the journey as an author.
That's very inspiring, ma'am. And Avalok, so you?
I think for me it was really different, but I mean, first I'm still getting over the shock that Shobha's published 11 books. I mean, I think like one was hard enough, and I have maybe like a second one where I've written a paragraph, and it's been like a few years, so 11. Wow. But anyway, for me, I mean, I am not like your quintessential author where I didn't grow up reading a lot. I have a learning disability. So reading for me is like is horrible. It's painful. It takes hours. I reread again and again. So it wasn't something like, people always said, "Oh, what do you do to relax?" I like grab a good book and I like read and I get lost in that. For me, it used to be like torture. So I wasn't someone who used to read, but like I was a journalist. I wanted to become a conflict journalist, and then I started doing that. I started researching. I started being in the field, and I started writing for Tehelka at that time. They were the only people who were allowing me to go into the conflict zones that I wanted to go in. And it just so happened that a former colleague of mine saw that I was writing as a profession with a learning disability, and she asked me to feature in a book that she was putting together on learning disabilities, and that kind of opened the door where that publishing house saw that I could write. Then they saw the work that I'd done in Tehelka, which at that time, I mean, I was about 24, 25, and I was sneaking across international borders. I was meeting drug cartels. I was meeting different militant organizations to understand what they were doing. And all this time, basically, my father was a serving general in the army. So, like they couldn't know who I really am. So it made sense for them that like the premise that I was in made for a compelling book. So they reached out to me and asked me, why don't you tell the story behind the stories? I had actually never thought of writing a book. I'll be honest, it was just a very, very random call, and I was like, let me give it a shot. So it's not really inspirational as such, I would say, but I mean, I wasn't inspired to do it. It was like accidental, but it was a very interesting journey.
Your life actually sounded like a book just now. I could imagine why your friend actually urged you to do that. And Richa ma'am, you?
Yeah, thank you. So basically, for me, there has been a combination of two things. I never thought I would write a book someday. I'm just a good writer since my school days only, and everybody
Ma'am, I'm
used to.
sorry. I'm not able to get your audio properly.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, since my childhood, I have been a good writer. I have never thought that I will be writing books someday. And the another factor that had worked in me was storytelling. So when it comes,
Ma'am, I think there's still distortion issue.
okay, is it better now? I think there is some issue with the audio. Let me fix my audio. Maybe then Nidhi can continue.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Give me a
Um, okay, let's move on and then we'll go back to Richa.
Publishing house spotted it and they wanted to convert this column into a book. So you dig deeper, you're reading similar books. The best way to understand a subject is actually to write a book on it. So I started reading each chapter in my book had like, I think there was one time when I had finished reading 15 books to write that one chapter of book, and then interview like people from the boondocks. I was in a part of Nagaland which took me like 5 hours of kacha drive. uh, you know we were in like in parts of Kerala which where no journalist had ever been to. So it's just, I think this the excitement of it, of finding people and the stories that they have to tell all over the country, and to think that this India exists, the India that I live in exists along with the India they live in. For me, that's fascinating, and that's always a very, very rich subject.
That's amazing. And Gaurav, sir, how did you get to start?
Yeah, hi Harshita. First of all, thank you for inviting, and good evening to all the panelists present here. And sorry for the technical glitch. I think it has happened first time that I faced a technical glitch. Never happened in these virtual meetings. So I can relate to Avalok, what starting my writing journey. My dad is also in Air Force, so that is another point that we have in common, the defense background. So for me, it was like. I had once I used to scroll Quora a lot. That was the time, I think in 2016-17 Quora had, as in it had just come in. So it was like people used to say more intellectual crowd is there on Quora, a question answer platform. So there somebody had asked the question, how do you how do you develop your stamina for running in 3 months? Can somebody give a step by step process? And that was the time where I was too much into sports. I've also played competitive cricket. So that was the time I wrote an answer, and that answer got really hit. So in one day I got 10,000 views, and I got some 15k, some I think 150 or 200k upvotes. So that was really, you can say, like it happens in the book Alchemist, beginner's luck for me. So then, because I just saw the numbers, okay, so I thought, what if I could actually grow it? Then I started writing more, then I started writing more, and then I created a space called as V Workout, which now has close to 500,000 views on Quora, where I write regularly, and we have also, as in, we get clients for virtual one-to-one fitness advices. So that's how the journey started. But still, I was never into book writing. Reading a book would be the last thing that I would do. I would tell you. But then recently, even I think 2 3 years back, I think in 2020 only, I had written an article for Your Story. So I just wrote the article, I submitted it. I didn't, and the article actually got published, and it was written that how my mother was experiencing things in lockdown, and it was really appreciated. And that was the time I felt that I could actually write. And then one of my friends, she told me that there is a publishing house in Germany, and they require some content to be written, and why don't you write? So that's the time I started writing my first book. And the good thing about writing a book is, when you're writing it, you're actually going through these experiences. And one thing that I've learned is, in order to be a good writer, you also have to be a good reader. So after that, I developed the habit of reading a lot. So now I have been continuously reading. For example, I read Atomic Habits. I read the book How to Be the Richest Guy in Babylon. And there are some other books also that I'm continuously reading. So still now, I would not say that, writing professionally is something that would be a part of my plan, but it is like I'm doing it because I'm enjoying it as of now. That's my.
That seems fair. I didn't expect there to be so many people who hadn't been readers all this while, but yeah, guess that life does throw you curveballs. And Richa, ma'am, your experience?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the technical glitch. It is better now, is it?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So for me, my journey has been like purely dynamic. I started off as a child when I started writing. So whatever I used to write, so my teachers and everybody used to appreciate that a lot. So people used to think I'm a good writer whenever it used to be about essays or any article or any sort of. So that appreciation was a kind of addiction to me. I started thinking in my head that okay, I'm a good writer, but I've never thought that this writing capability will lead me to an author someday. And then I had a habit of storytelling also. So whenever I told stories to somebody, they were very fascinated. They were attracted towards it. And there is one good thing in my stories, that when I start to tell any story to anybody, they'll be like, they won't move for the next 5 minutes. So that was the one comment that I used to get from everybody. So one of my friends suggested that, why don't you club both these things? You are good at storytelling and you are good at writing. Why don't you write a book? And I was like, yes, I can do that. So I chose a topic which was those fallen breadcrumbs, a story about all the students around there just fighting for engineering and medical and not thinking what they exactly want to do in life. And then I narrated the story through my own eyes, of all the people, or all the children that I had seen all around, and then I wrote that book. So that idea actually hit me, and that is the idea through which I'm writing my another book as well. So that's actually the hit that made me an author today, and that's the one inspiration. So I think I'll continue to do so. Because I don't know if it gives me that kind of happiness or pleasure. I don't know. It's just the appreciation and the applause that I receive after writing any piece of article or something, that kinds of excite me. So yeah, that's the inspiration.
That's amazing. That sounds like a lot. That's very relatable. I believe a lot of people are going through the same thing right now. A lot of budding
Yeah.
writers just waiting for their chance. And for the next question, how has the pandemic affected you as an author specifically? Vibha ma'am, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Um, the, in one word, first, in one word, the pandemic has impacted me positively, because the author journey has started, the real journey started in the 2022. I had never thought that I'll start the writing journey again, but the incidents and the meeting with people who inspired me that you can start again. And when you think anything, that means when you desire something with your heart, then definitely you get it. And at the same time, in 2022, I received almost 3 to 4 opportunities to join them and start writing. And so the first one, and one by one, I started getting the opportunity, and it made me happen. And the biggest one was the growth hacking book too. That was unexpected for me when I received that, okay, would you like to join this project? And within 5 minutes, okay, no, definitely I'll join, because it is giving me a chance to connect with the 100 people, like-minded people, and share your experience with them and learn from them. So I become the part of them. And after some time, I also received the publications opportunity to work with a publication like the BPP publication, that is the Asia's largest publication. And working with them, I have learned so many things. So definitely the pandemic, I say, that is the good one for me, and I have learned so many things in my writing journey. And I see that, and in the next year I will learn more. So in one word, it is positively.
I mean, I think that was one of the very few people I heard who said that pandemic has been a positive impact on them.
Okay, yeah. It happens.
Yeah, it's good too. And
Yes.
Shobha ma'am,
For me, it was more about self reflection. I needed to take a step back to see what are my writing goals, what am I going to do in the long run. And then I decided that because I was in lockdown and there were so many restrictions, I took the opportunity and trained to be a life coach. And I started my own consulting business because suddenly people were not realizing, they were self reflecting on their own lives, and they needed a writer, a professional to write their story. So I was a consultant and I helped a client to ghostwrite his work. So I was doing a lot of little things on the side, but it was a journey of self reflection and self growth, both ways.
that is amazing. And Avalok sir?
So for me, I mean, I don't define myself as an author because I think most of the work I've done, like even while writing the book, I do a lot more video work. So I make more documentaries and I create content for digital platform. I was heading a team that created like video content. So I mean, I don't think like the pandemic impacted me, quote unquote, as an author, but definitely as someone who's like thinking and creating content and looking at stories and finding them, kind of like what Nidhi says, like my passion was what led to the book was the fact that I actually wanted to go out there into the field, push myself into spaces that I hadn't explored, push my own reasoning, thinking, and that led to finding stories. So I think though we were all in lockdown, I think similar to Shobha, the pandemic forced, I think it forced, it's like a break from normal, right? Everything was functioning a certain way. You had this rupture in that space of normal, at least in the first lockdown where everything just shut down. And because we were in the media, so we were going out and shooting, and like you got to see Delhi like empty. You're driving on the roads, cameras on the car, and there's just like silence. It's like unheard of. But I mean, it forced you to reflect and think, not necessarily about my goals as an author or a professional, but as a human being. Like where do I see myself? Where do I want to go? What I'm doing right now, or what society as a collective is doing right now. Possibly there's a problem with that. How do we? I mean, these are like meta thoughts that you have because you're closed in a room. You have nothing better to do. So you're having these like meta life conversations with yourself. So I think obviously there is a definite negative impact of the pandemic from the point of view that you can't go out. And for me, like I feed off being in the field. You get stories, ideas, that conflict, internal conflict of thought comes from that. But at the same time, there was this like churn that happened where you were forced to, at least I was forced to kind of rethink what I am doing right now, my normal, like what's right and wrong with that. How do I look at that? So I mean, I wouldn't overall. I think the pandemic has been disastrous, and like from mental health point of view, it hasn't been fun. I'm happy Vibha had a positive outcome, but otherwise it's been quite tough from a creative point of view as well as from like who am I, Avalok Langer, as a person point of view. So it's created this spiral of like, oh my God, what do I need to do with life? One of those things.
I think that is what is most of our experiences too with the pandemic.
Yeah, but the only advantage that I guess storytellers or content creators have is that you can take all this nonsense that's going in your mind, all these thoughts, and channelize it into content, channelize it into a book, into an article, into a film. So I mean, that's the advantage, right? The advantage that you have, and I'm like, I think again that's something that the pandemic has forced, at least me in my field to do, is that you need to kind of become self-sufficient, right? You need to be able to kind of write yourself, think yourself, research yourself, which is anyway with the like the book writing process or journalistic process. But from a video point of view, it's about like being able to shoot yourself, edit yourself, learn graphics. I mean, you're becoming more and more insular, more and more self-dependent, and obviously the economic factors that lead to that, because there are opportunities which come with being multi-skilled and things like that. But there is a huge advantage that I think like everyone on this panel would possibly have, having that skill set of storytelling, that you can take this trauma, this chaos, this churn internally and channelize it into something. Whereas possibly other people who haven't maybe reached that stage or haven't perfected that, like that just stays inside you. Here you're able to put it on paper and push it out.
That's true. And Nidhi ma'am?
So for me, I think last few years before the pandemic started, I was just, life was a blur. I was just moving around so quickly. There was a job to do. Then I was writing my book. Then I had a kid. Then I wrote another book. I had another kid, and there was just so much to absorb. And suddenly, it all came to a standstill, and I was like, what? And all these years, I took I got a kick from travel writing, because that's what I enjoyed the most, exploring stories and going into places I didn't think I would, and ending up in places um, uh, I didn't think I would end up in, and somehow the pandemic just restricted me and me with my kids, and I was suddenly like looking at them, and I'm like, okay, I have to look at them all day and then do nothing else, those sort of thoughts. I mean, I love them and all, but then how kids can be. But so that sort of stuff, and then of course you had, you know, uh, you suddenly start becoming more sensitive to your own surroundings. Your house help, your my God, his stories. Suddenly we were having conversations. There were times when I sat with my guard who's from a Muslim ghetto here in Calcutta, and you were like chatting and things of that sort. And I think that just sensitized me to look for stories, like go back to my journalistic roots as a writer, and look at stories in a very different way. So I think that's what helped me evolve. And I think the most important change that happened for me was the fact that I want to be more financially independent than ever. I mean, it's this was sudden. This was the biggest jolt, and it sort of affected my writing career in the sense I'm looking at the alternative means where I can earn more money than just writing. But then, I guess yeah, that's how it was,
So you would say you found yourself again.
perhaps.
And Gaurav sir?
Yeah, so I would, agree to the point that Avlok had mentioned that yes, writers do have this ability to actually take this chaos and present it in a way that it becomes it becomes a book, it becomes a movie, it becomes a documentary. And I think that was actually a thought behind why I named the book Chaotically Organized. So that was also some thought had gone behind this. Talking about the pandemic time, I think for me also it was a time that I reflected on myself. So I used to think uh, we always complain that we never had the time. Now when I'm getting the time, why I'm not writing? And I realized the reason was because I was considering writing as an additional activity apart from my professional work. So it's like you're working the whole day, and then when you get time, you write. But one thing that I did during this time of pandemic was to actually use this, not writing, but the concept of storytelling, even in my business. So let's say even when I'm making a client presentation today, I'm not just making a presentation. It's like a story I'm going to tell them. Okay, this is what the business requirement is. This is what the issue is. This is what the solution is, and these are how the benefits are going to be. So it has to be told in such a way that it feels like a story. That's why we, tend to remember stories more. Even when it comes to email writing, it's not just a simple email passing the information. It's a form of an article. It's a piece that when somebody would read, he would be like, "What an email he has written." So that is something I reflected on in this pandemic time, and that is what I'm trying to do. So whether I'm writing on LinkedIn, whether I'm writing an article, or any activity that is even related to my let's say professional expertise, I'm trying to include that storytelling aspect of writing. So this is something that I learned in this pandemic period and trying to actually inculcate it.
That's amazing. And Rishama?
Yeah, so mine is a kind of story. So before pandemic, my life was like juggling between my work, my GMAT exams, and all those stuffs that everybody had there in their lives. So my work involved a lot of traveling. So I used to in the morning as well, in the evening as well, and then in work also I had to travel a lot. So I never used to get time. I had my stories, I had my writing abilities, but I used to write for my office, articles, made presentations, but I never got that time to write whatever that was there in my head. And then also, I, as a creative person, I always felt that after my entire days of work, after 9-10 p.m., when there was silence in the atmosphere, and when you got that, when there is a time actually, like most of the writers or some creative persons out there, they can relate to it, that this that silence actually helps you to get your thoughts and everything, and that actually comes when you're done with your day, when you're done with your kids and all those stuffs that you have in your life. So I suddenly started feeling that during pandemic, when Delhi and Noida roads were like all shut, all silent, there was nobody in the society, I sensed that same atmosphere during daytime, and it was like very negative on my mind. I was like feeling it's almost, it felt like night almost in the day as well. And that was the time when it actually hit me, and I was like, okay, if I have time also and this atmosphere also, which actually helps me to write, shall I start doing that? And then I utilized my travel time that I used to go to office, and that there was 2.5 hours of traveling that I used to do every day. So I utilized that time, and I wrote that book. And I won't say that it all happened during the pandemic, but the pandemic helped me in a way that it taught me minimalism, because I was always a person who wanted everything. Okay, I'll get this, I'll get a promotion, then I'll do MBA and everything. But I thought that pandemic told me to stop, not to run. Every person can, whosoever we were running like anything. Now after pandemic, we realize that after this all things, there is a thing called life, and it is it's almost the utmost important thing. So that actually gave me a sense of not just writing for the sake of writing and completing the book, hurrying towards it. I learned a pace that I didn't have in my life. So that actually gave me both learning and also the time to write my book.
That's incredible. And for the next question, I would like to start with Avalok sir. How do you think the role of bookstores has changed over time?
The role of bookstores. I mean, so maybe I'm not the right person because I never went to bookstores growing up. So like, it's hard for me to say like how this changed. But now, I mean, in terms of like with the advent of technology, I think I don't know about the role of bookstores, but I personally feel, and I'm not sure on this panel, I don't know if it's a popular opinion, but I strongly feel that like people are reading less and less and less. The attention spans have shrunk so drastically. Um, and then in terms of it, you are always left with this, like the reason, or one of the reasons why I'm struggling with, let's say, writing a second book. It's not because I have the idea, but it's like sort of like, what's the point? right? I'm gonna write a book. Like if it's a bestseller, thousands of people will read it. But if I can make this a documentary, maybe a million, 2 million people will see it, right? So if I can make this into a fictionalized narrative, which I can get onto an OTT, even more people will see it. So I mean, like, yes, bookstores still are important in at least in my world. Bookstores are important in like a small niche. But like I'm buying books on Amazon. I'm reading them on my Kindle, but I'm watching way more documentaries, listening to many more podcasts. So I think that shift is has happened over the last, like, since I, let's say, became a published author, where getting published still has that, it has like a stamp of approval, and it has a feel good factor that, oh, I'm a published author. But I'm not sure how much it means anymore, from the point of view that who's reading your book, right? The same story. Like I've done that where, let's say, a chapter in my book, I converted it into a 4-part documentary, which then I put on our YouTube channel. And like on Facebook, on one episode, you got 5.5 million views. Each of the episodes have like hundreds of thousands of views. It's not even close to how many people read my book. Like I'm sure that less people read my book than like my neighbors in my colony. You know what I mean? So what's the point? You put in like 7 years of research, you go, you push yourself, go to the extreme, then you like read, reread, go to like, I mean, like everyone said, when you write a chapter, it's not just like, oh, this is my experience, this is what I saw. You're reading everything around that. You're doing like deep dive research. You're going to source material, right? If there's a letter that Gandhi wrote to the Nagas in 1946, you're finding that letter and reading that letter, and then making a thought about that. And then if like a few thousand people are going to read it, is this the best platform for my thought? So I think I again, I've gone totally off your question, and I haven't answered the role of bookstores, because I really don't go to bookstores. But I think like I'm sitting here questioning the role of the current medium of hard books, or even like soft copy books when it's a full book. When more and more people are reading, are watching rather than reading. I mean, I know I've not answered your question, but I mean that's kind of what I feel.
It's nicer to get an outsider's perspective because I'm sure as Shobha mom can attest to being a reader and having written 11 books. I'm sure she does not agree
Yeah.
with your point of view, but I would like to hear your thoughts, ma'am.
Yes, yes, you're right. I'm quite biased. I love bookstores. For me, they are more than, it's not about going and buying a book in a bookstore. It's about, it's like you're looking for treasure. It's a place of knowledge. It's where you find something that you never expected, a kind of book that you never really expected to find. So for me, bookstores and libraries are places that you go to just immerse yourself in so much knowledge. And obviously, now with the pandemic, the role has changed. Yes, I understand that. I mean, you won't find that many bookstores in airports and malls. And I mean, maybe they still are there, but they're probably not selling books. Maybe they're selling toys and gift items and everything else. But if I was to think about it, I would say that bookstores have to look at themselves as a business, and therefore they have to be flexible. So flexibility requires them to look at their business model differently. Instead of the consumer going to the bookstore has to find a way to get to the consumer. So obviously they will do more e-commerce. I mean, that's accelerated in the last exponentially in the last 2 years, simply because of the pandemic. Everything's selling online. So I would say the way they market themselves, the way they are trying to stay afloat, they have to be flexible. They have to be innovative in their approach. That's the way I see it. And
I think
hopefully
that's the
they
way.
survive, because I want to go back to a bookstore.
I agree. And Vibha ma'am, you have written mostly academic, technical oriented books, and you've also published an ebook. How do you think bookstores play into that?
Uh, Definitely, I believe that we must have to visit the bookstores because earlier I was not believing it. But my mentor said, okay, once you go, and because the books don't, you don't find books, books finds you. You just go store and check out the books. So you, that books and the cover page automatically attracts you, that okay, no, this is the book. And you can't feel the same feeling when you are going and the online portal like Kindle and something. So if you really want to, that means what kind of book you need to learn and you are curious, so you must have to go the bookstore. And I did the same, I followed it. And since I think it's 2021 January, it was tough to get a bookstore because there was a lockdown, but still I anyhow find it. And I visited and I just look out all the books and check out. I find the similarity that all kind of the leadership book was attracting me. So that's the importance of the bookstore. If you are looking for your niche and what you want in your life, what is your passion, then definitely you must have to go to the bookstore. And we all know that in the last decade the bookstores the has been in the loss. So yeah, but still we can figure out, we can take the initiative, but it is still important. Yeah.
It makes sense. And
Yeah.
Nidhi ma'am, you mentioned your roots in journalism. Do you think journalism and bookstores are anyway related? Like as an author versus as a journalist, do you think the role of bookstores has changed right now? Do you think
Not
you have to
really. I
adapt?
mean, as long as you have really good libraries, you don't really need a bookstore. I mean, let's be honest, Amazon is so much more convenient to, I mean, I end up going to looking at books, I end up going to a bookstore, don't find half the titles that I need. uh, I just end up ordering them on Amazon. But I mean, having said that, I live in Calcutta, and this city is just stuck in a time zone. So basically, I mean, the more the world tries to move forward, the more the city tries to go backwards in time. And we had, I think, in the last 2 years, I've seen two new bookstores coming in my neighborhood. There are multiple cafes where books are thrown in like a little little display, and people go there for the vibe of it. uh, I've seen mommies, the mommy market splurging on books. It seems like they are this is like the new hoarding, the hoarding set. These are the people, instead of like investing in toys, like they just buy endless amount of books. Tell them that there's a story, tell, attach your theme to it, like, hey, this will help your child deal with an emotion. I'm being cynical here, but then this is how I perceive things. That tell them, sell them an emotion, and they'll buy it. Tell them the fact that hey, this will help your child deal with gender issues, and then they buy it. So I guess like the publishing houses have also really upped their marketing games in the past 2 years. There are more books coming out to facilitate this sort of. There've been multiple requests to convert my books into kids books, make them easy to read for kids, because they seem to be doing very, very well. There have been multiple requests for from OTT platforms to convert my books into OTT content. So yes, I mean, things are changing, and I always believe, let's not try to hold on to something so hard. I mean, let's not try to bring cassettes back in the time of you know iPods and iPhones and smartphones. Doesn't make sense, right? Books are important because the kind of content they build up, like that one little subject, and the kind of digging up that happens from multiple platforms, multiple perspectives, and each subject, multiple authors writing, multiple writers from different backgrounds, different languages, writing books on similar subjects. That ways books become very, very important, because then they become a repository, like a rich resource, and they don't get lost in a din of things, unlike things on OTT. And because it's all very easy and quick, uh, quickly generated content, unlike books. I know they're trash books too now, there are a lot of potty reads around, but then at the same time, books are important, bookstores are very important. uh, but let's redefine, let's rethink what the whole idea of a bookstore was, maybe.
That's a good question. And Gaurav sir, what is your opinion on it?
Yeah, see, so I will, take the answer from, I'll talk about two aspects. One, bookstores being there. I firmly believe, although in the initial days I was not that much of an avid reader, that bookstores are going to be there, because that whole feel of going to a bookstore, holding that book in your hand, just feeling that smell of those pages, that is something, a feeling which is unparalleled. And people who have been into reading, they relate more to it. So in this lockdown, I had also done a lot of clubhouse sessions where people from, let's say, from Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, from all, let's say, walks of life were there. And still the cult audience which is into reading, they prefer reading a physical copy. Even I get a lot of requests that when are you converting into a physical copy, and I get one. So that is still into process. From a When we talk about from a business perspective, so let's say Amazon thinks that reading book is a good habit. It should be inculcated in today's generation, but today's generation doesn't have time. So what they do, okay, they come up with the concept of Audible. On the go you can listen to a book. They come up with the concept of Kindle. Okay, why carry a book? Just have the book in your mobile phone or your Kindle, and you can read it. But I strongly believe that the experience that you get while you're reading a book, because you're imagining the characters, you're actually into that story, that feel, that can only come from a physical copy. So yes, uh, there is a substantial, I would not say substantial, there is a little amount of audience which is moving into, let's say, Kindle or Audible, or the new people or the new generation that will come. They will actually start from Kindle or Audible, but still there is a significant portion which still would prefer actually going to a bookstore and buying a physical copy and reading it, because that is something, you know, the feeling is unparalleled, I would say.
I kind of have to agree with that. The feeling, I don't think there's anything like it. And Richa, ma'am, you mentioned that you've been published during the pandemic itself. So, do you think the role of bookstores has changed for your book, and do you think it would have been different had it been before the pandemic?
I don't think so. I think like it's all about generation. It's all about liking. So I think today's generation is all about reels, all about YouTube shorts. Like people are not even willing to invest more than 30 seconds of their time watching a video. So if you even give them the ebook, if the people or the younger generation who is not into it, they won't even read it. So I think the major thought process that goes behind reading the book is basically the zeal to read it. So that's the important thing. And comparing the analogy of whether to have the bookstores or not, I have a one example. So everybody has their temple and goddess or god's idols at home, but still you go to temple, right, to visit, because it gives you that feeling, but that you have accomplished something. You are visiting temple, you are feeling the surroundings and everything. So that's the kind of religion that comes in the mind of a book reader when they go to the bookstore, feel the book, have books all around. It's a feeling, I can tell you. Like, I am not a reader as such, but that feeling going to the bookstore and seeing, smelling those books, as Gaurav has mentioned, so that's a altogether different experience, and that can't be put up. So Amazon, when started with the ebooks, look, I am an MBA person, so I know they started with the business of entire ebooks and everything, and they got a large traction of books. But still, the major thought behind converting from going from physical bookstore to ebook was to give the accessibility of the books to the different generation, younger generations, because now we are moving into an era where we don't have time. So that's not the, I won't burden the younger generation about they don't have that they don't want to read or write. It's just about time. We don't want to invest much time into something which we don't know how the result is going to be. So investing, like reading 200 pages and then realizing, oh, it is not worth the read, it's a waste of time, right? So that's why the generation had moved towards audibles, towards ebooks, so that you just have the book, you actually pay lesser for ebooks as compared to the physical books. So that's also involved in that process, where you get to save your time, money, and the entire structure is designed in that way. So I think bookstores will definitely stay, definitely, because it's going to be there. It has a physical touch and feel, which will make it which will actually help the bookstores to be there.
Uh, yes.
Ashita, can I just like, being an outsider, can I just like ask a question
Yeah,
or
sure, definitely.
question slash comment? Because I mean, I understand what everyone is saying here, and it's kind of like this romanticized notion of books and bookstores, and it's kind of like my sister's been like that her whole life. So I get that, I understand that, but I'm talking like my thinking, and I wanted to understand how all of you think. My thinking is coming from the point of view that if I'm putting 7 years of effort into something, and I am collating this information with lots of effort. Don't I want my information to reach the maximum number? Don't I want more people to consume what I have thought of, what I have found, what I have structured together, in whatever medium is convenient for them? Now, what a physical bookstore and a physical book, it is, at some level, it also is discriminatory because they're not everywhere. Not everyone has access to that. Not every It does not exist in everyone's world that, oh, I want to go to a bookstore and buy a book. Similarly, even ebooks might not exist in everyone's world. However, with cheaper data plans, with more mobile penetration, maybe YouTube exists in more people's world. So I'm not getting at it from the point of view that, hey, bookstores need to shut down. I'm looking at it from the point of view that I I, as an author, content creator, a writer, whatever, I mean, whatever anyone wants to label me, I want to tell a story, or I want to push out a thought to the maximum number of people, because it's not about, at least for me, it's not about, oh, I'm published, or oh, my video is live. It's about, have I been able to influence thought in a larger circle? What I have learned through my experiences, like ordinarily, like you go into the back of Beyond or something, and you see something, and you're like, oh, I didn't know this. This forced me to think about something. Maybe I should share this with more people. Then doesn't it become, as creators who've done research and you're putting it out? For me, it's about the largest number. And there, I don't think books get you to the largest number, or bookstores get you to the largest number. And then, do we need to think about a different medium or multiple mediums to push out the thought that we have?
Can I share something on that?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I've been in this field 25 years. I've worked with different publishing houses. And from what I currently understand, what a book is, it's your calling card. It is telling you that you have credibility as an author and you are capable of doing so much more. So when you create content, they are going to say, oh, this person is a published author. So he's written this. He's an expert in this field. He's a change maker. He's a thought leader, whatever he is. But that book becomes a part of you as a package. What else do you offer? So, for example, I've come to realize, besides my book, I offer myself as a consultant. I offer myself as a writer's coach. Aspiring writers want to write. I can offer them a class. Why? Because I've written X number of books. So right now, what I understand the journey of this generation now, you're right. You want sound bites, you want quick, instant fixes, you want, like 10 minutes, I want to understand this, particular subject. Agreed. That's how it works, and we have to accept this is the new way of, evolving as a community to understand things as far as knowledge is taken in. It's not like information dump, but we want to absorb knowledge in a way that we understand it and we can apply it in our lives. So this is how I see books, as now your calling card, as a way to prove your worth and to add on or pad on whatever business you're doing.
Could I add to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Nidhi.
Yeah, the two things that I Avalok, that you one is the idea of a bookstore being redundant in its traditional format, right? Is that what you're driving at? That as a
No, no,
bookstore.
I'm not looking at it from the business point of view. I'm saying from a creator point of view.
Yeah,
Like us, when we've done the research, when we've got a
right.
thought, a new thought, or a detailed thought, shouldn't we push it out to the maximum number? And then a hard book in a bookstore possibly isn't the best medium. And maybe we need to look at multiple mediums to push out our thought.
Which is what I think, these days the publishers, and there is a whole new role in every publishing unit these days, called the I think it's called the visual director or something like that. And they, in almost all publishing houses, have this role now, and these roles basically look at the books, and how these books can be sold to various formats. Whether these books can be converted into audiobooks, whether these books can be sold outside India, whether these books can be sold to producers and developers and content creators. So obviously publishers have started looking in, where there is money automatically, where there is interest there's money, and where there's money that the business starts getting directed in that direction automatically. So this is a new role that I've seen being developed. And like even the agents these days, the agents that you hire to take your book further, even they have to be, when you're looking at agents, or you're choosing between agent A, B, C, you're looking at how competent they are in taking your book to different formats, is what have learned very recently too. But this is how the publishing industry has changed over the past, very very quickly over the past 3-4 years. Now when you come to a bookstore specifically, I mean, when you as an author want to take your format forward, I think then it depends upon what your the person who's telling the story, what his skill set is, or what his toolbox has. You know, is he good at? I feel like if I used a camera to tell the stories that I told, they would be probably colored with how I want the story to come out. How I choose to visualize it, how what kind of setting I create it in, how what aspect of the character I allow to speak, and what character I allow to or I do not let blossom. So but as a writer, for me, telling the same story, because I had this trouble, when someone had approached me to convert my first book in for an OTT platform. I'm like, how will you do it without its essence? I am trying to I'm this is it's basically, I've told these stories of a genealogist, like a panda in Haridwar, who is basically struggling with the fact that, hey, his profession's gone. His next generation is not going to take up this profession, and this is the end of it. At the same time, he has so much caste discrimination issues. Like he demeans his staff, which comes from a lower caste. At the same time, he's trying to learn computer and trying to digitize all the material that he's collected over the years. So the irony of things is that, the picture has to be a lot more complete, and to represent the story in a visual format without letting some color come in gets very tough for me as a storyteller. And that's the reason I choose to tell my stories, and then let's see where these go. But then I choose to tell my stories in the written format.
And Gaurav, so you were about to say something?
Yeah, yeah. So, Avlok, I think this can be answered in two ways. Now, since you mentioned that, I agree with the point that when you have done a research for so many years and you want the content or your work to actually reach a lot of people, and that channel of reaching a lot of people is through, let's say, a video form of content and not through books, because it would reach to a limited audience. But then
No,
the
Mike,
second,
sorry, this is Gaurav to jump in, but I'm saying, like, for example, you have a Quora, you're like killing it on Quora, right?
yeah,
I mean, that's also a medium and a format in which you can put that information in.
right.
I'm not
Agree.
like I do video right now, but I'm not saying video is the only format. There's so
Okay.
many ways to take like complex thoughts and distribute them to larger numbers. That's basically what I'm trying to get at.
Right, right. Yeah. So I would say, from a creator point of view, yes, that is your call. How do you want to take it? But sometimes it happens is, for example, if I'm writing a piece of content, or if I've created something, I want the reader to experience it through the form of a book. Because let's say, let's consider a use case. When somebody is, let's say, reading a book, no, it hardly happens that they'll read it in one sitting. Let's say a 400 pages book, they'll just read it in 4 to 5 sittings. So I want the reader to actually experience that journey in bits and pieces, and then to, for him or her to think what would happen next. This is how I want that person to experience this. When it comes to, when you mentioned that there are other forms of channels also, so that completely depends on the creator. Like, since I have put in so much of hard work, I want to reach maximum people, I want maximum people to actually have a look at my work, and then the commercial aspects also comes in. So in my opinion, it completely depends on the person who's creating the content. There is no right or wrong as in which should be the preferred approach.
uh, Avlok sir actually kind of asked the question I was about to ask, and he opened up a very good conversation. So we have a few questions by the viewers. One of them is, what was your thought process when you think you've hit a dead end while writing, or in Avlok sir's case, when he's videographing or content creating? What do you do? How do you get out of that dead end? Vibha ma'am, would you like to start?
Could you help me understand the question? Can you repeat?
So
Uh,
when you've hit a dead end while writing, where you've stuck yourself in a hole, how do you come out of it? How do you creatively move past it?
okay, that is called the writer's block.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, in one language. What I believe that there is a no writer's block. It's only on you that if you are like in the researching, like if you are doing a depth research and if you are putting efforts to find the any art, any content, then it is fine. You can look around content around you. So I believe that just go to and find out the information, do research, and there will be no writer's block. Like for instance, if you are reading a book, so book is itself a resource where you can generate a lot of contents. Like when I'm more active on the LinkedIn, so that lots of query come how you can write that. Okay, that one book is itself a resource and the treasure, and I can write a thousands of pieces of content. So just do deep research, and if you are lacking in the research, then definitely there is a lack of creativity and the lack of writer's block. So the simple solution: put your efforts, look around yourself, and still if you want to write and you don't want to read, so just look around you. What is in the 24 hours we are interacting with multiple pupils, we are doing multiple things, and we can take anything and write about it. So there is no writer's block. So I just figure out in this way. Yeah.
That's amazing. And Richa ma'am?
Yeah, so for me, I think writer's block is actually handled well by the genres also, you write. So if you're writing fiction, you have the very good control over the rap, the characters and the plot of the story. So whenever you hit that dead end where you don't know how to move your story forward, you have the power in your hand to twist the plot and the characters according to you. So for me, it actually becomes a blessing in disguise. So in my book also, in those fallen breadcrumbs also, there was a point where I uh, hit the dead end actually, where I didn't know if I should leave it open ended or if I should give it a closure. But then after a lot of research, as Vibha ma'am has wonderfully answered, after interacting with a lot of students and everyone, I realized that there is no end solution to it. So, through my surveys and through my questionnaire, I actually reached the stage where I realized that it should be open ended. So, that was the one case. And the second was when you're writing, no, there are a lot of areas where you don't understand where you are actually are on the correct path. So actually at the end of the day, when you have written like say around 5,000, 8,000 words, and then you are like, okay, so this is not how I wanted to, it just flew. And it just, because writing is like imagination for me, I imagine I write. It's not like it's a well thought of process and then you do it. So it's very creative in you. That's why I think writing is called a creative process. So it's very dynamic, it keeps on changing. So it actually for me, since I write more of fiction, so I think I have a hold to it, and I convert it into opportunities through a lot of surveys and questions and interacting and interviewing the target group who I'm writing for. So that's how I deal with it.
It's amazing. And Shobha ma'am?
Yeah, so what I do is I just go take time out from the content that I'm working on and just walk away and just go and, put my mind on something else, because then usually that's how ideas come up. As a creative person, you got to give yourself space, time to breathe, allow your work to breathe, in the sense, just leave it aside. Don't push that creativity out of you. It'll not come. It has to have time to just like settle. So just walk away, do something else, distract yourself, and spend time with family. Go in the kitchen, go take a walk, do something else. The ideas will come.
Thank you, ma'am. And Nidhi ma'am?
I guess pretty much the same thing, go back to the field or, revisit notes, revisit or hear the interviews again. That pretty much helps, you figure out where the gap is and then you move on from there.
Okay, ma'am. And Avalok sir, how do you deal with your creative block?
I think similarly, like I go and play basketball or go for a run, watch crap on TV. Basically, kind of like reset. You need to something that is so consuming and so different from what you're doing. Like your mind just breaks away from that. And then also like when I write, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure how it works for everyone else, but because of like I create basically you map out the like I map out the chapter with like what's the flow going to be, what are the larger themes and then sub themes within that theme, and that's how I kind of write to that. So when you get like when you hit a roadblock, then you kind of go. I at least take a break and everything. Then I go back not to the chapter, but I go back to the map that I made, and I think about that map. What are the logical links? What's wrong with this logical link? Why is it not connecting? What's not fun about this? So I change the logical link and then restructure on the flow, and then come back to like the chapter that I'm writing. So that really helps because it again it's like a reset, right? Like you reset the flow, so you know where you're coming from and where you're going. So when you're writing, you can go back to that and you can add certain details, new details that maybe you even thought of at the start of the chapter, which are gonna impact the end of the chapter. So it's a combination of that. It's a combination of taking a complete break, switching off, and then coming back not to the words but to the structure and like rethinking the structure and then writing. That's what's usually helped me.
Thank you, sir. And Gaurav, sir?
Yeah, so I also do the similar thing which I think Shobha ma'am and Avalok mentioned. So leave that thing physically. For example, if I'm sitting on my table and I'm writing, sometimes it happens is that you're not getting that one particular word because you know that the word is not right to actually express this thought of that character. Let's say two characters are speaking to each other. So in that case, that block comes. So what I do for myself is I leave that thing physically, but obviously when you are in the kitchen or in the other room or going out, that remains with you mentally because you're continuously thinking, and sometimes then it clicks. Okay, this is the right word, and then you come back to your desk, come back to your place, and actually start resuming the work. But one thing I would say is, yes, creativity is something that cannot be forced. That you cannot force a person to actually write. But then we also have to stick to deadlines. Otherwise, the book or the article or the piece that we are writing would never get complete. So yeah, even in my case, I take time off that thing and then come back to it after getting the regenerated thoughts, I would say.
Thank you. And for the last question, I would just like to ask what advice do you have for the upcoming budding authors who maybe are just starting out, and how do you advise them to deal with the change in medium? As Avalok sir mentioned, there is quite a change in medium recently. People are gravitating towards shorter stories for a quicker read. So, how do you help someone who's supposedly traditionally a reader of novellas? How do you help them? How do you tell them to change their medium, or how do you help them throughout their career? I would like to start with Avalok sir because you're a fan of shorter media. So
No, I'm getting painted as this like person who doesn't like have any attention span. I watch lots of stuff and I read lots of stuff, and I watch
no,
really
sir,
boring things
I
like for
understand.
hours in a day. Okay, and I do like crazy research. I don't like reading, but I do it because you have to do it. But like I mean, for, like my whole thing is that getting the message to a larger number. Um, but like two things. I think like my advice has constantly been for anything, like whether you want to get in, like if you want to get into storytelling, like forget the format, storytelling. I would say push yourself and put yourself in a situation which is uncomfortable and unknown. Because when you're in a situation which is uncomfortable and unknown, you are learning and you're forced to question a lot of your like known truths. And when you start questioning it, and it could be like what Nidhi was saying, like talking to your guard. It could be like what I did, like going across an international border with a diamond smuggler. It could be like seeing my tiny son play in the pandemic. It could be any of the, it can be small things, it can be huge things, but it's about creating that like discomfort from normal, right? And then you're forced to think about it, question, and that will lead you to an interesting idea or a thought that you want to know more about, right? And that becomes an interesting entry point as any story, like as a storyteller or someone who wants to push out a thought. As for like preparing, it's a reality. I mean, I think we're on this like cusp where there is a change in order. And I know that there is this huge like you can't see it, but I have a huge bookshelves there with really fat books which I do read. But there is this like there is a churn, there is a change, and we have to adapt and evolve with that, right? If we're going to remain in the romanticized notion of, look, I want that like print. When I was in Telka, I wanted my article in the magazine, not on the website, because I had that romanticized notion that I can hold the piece of paper, my name is there, I can show it to people. It gives me that validation that, Shobha was talking about. I'm published. But today I see that the medium is totally changed. I mean, if you're a fan of novellas and you want to write that, you can have a riveting blog where chapter after chapter is on your personal blog. You can have like um, a chain of tweets that are endless. You can have Instagram pages with this. You don't need to change what you're doing. You need to adapt to the medium, right? The mediums are evolving, and the advantage is that now you have more options. Writing or telling storytelling, from at least from a written point of view, was restricted to people who were good with language, had good writing skills. You had to like usually it is like a lot of the people I've met is like English honors from at least in Delhi, St. Stephen's, LSR, like the top colleges. Those are the people who are writing books. But now, because the medium has changed and everyone has access, everyone can be a storyteller, and it's just about perfecting your craft. It's about pushing yourself, finding something interesting, and you can tell the novella on a blog. You don't need the book. That's what I'm trying to get at. And more people, I guarantee it, more of my if I had written a blog rather than a book, more of my friends would have read it. I'm sure less friends have read it because it's a book and they're like, oh man, 240 pages, not my thing. Let me just read the intro and say good job. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, sir. And Shobha, how do you advise them to adapt to change?
Yes, I do have that situation where in my family members or extended family, they don't read books. They'll say, Shobha, when is your book going to be out as a movie? We'll come watch it. And I'm like, no, that's not the whole idea. You have to read my book. But being serious about it, it is the love of writing. To aspiring authors, writers, I would say you have to love words. You have to love to craft stories in a way that connects with people, that touches people's hearts. The end goal is not going to be you're a best-selling author, or it's not a fantasized notion that there is going to be some grand royalty at the end of the tunnel. It's luck, it's destiny. Yeah, there are many best-selling authors who make lots of money, but it's not going to be that attitude that will make you want to write. The attitude to write for an aspiring author is you have to love to write. That is as simple as that. And if you love to write, then write. And as Avalok suggested, write short stories, write blog posts, write content, write for anywhere where people can actually read your work and appreciate it. Sell and share a message, share something that you feel strongly about. That I felt strongly about self-esteem, so I wrote a book on self-esteem. And now it's not about the book, it's about the content. It's about sharing how self-esteem is so important. So I've evolved in that way. I'm in my mid 50s. I understand things are changing and we have to evolve. And in that sense, I've chosen to focus on the message, not the actual book, that please read my book. But Shobha, what are you sharing in the book that's going to help me? So everyone wants to know what that book is going to help them. It's the quality. Nobody has time, to just read. They can go on, Netflix if you want and enjoy the stories there. But what are you sharing that will make a change in me? So that's what stories are about now. If I take it from all of you, from what I understand.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you so much for the advice. And Gaurav, sir?
Yeah, so I'll answer this question in using two aspects. The one is why. Why do you want to write? And as Shobha ma'am mentioned, you actually have to love it because you are the first person who's reading your work. When you're writing it, you're reading it. So if you don't, enjoy that process of writing, then you might write one article, two article, but eventually it will go down. So the first thing is you have to identify why do you want to write. Do you want to write because it's cool to be an author? That author tag is there, that I've published that book, or do you want to write because you want to know, want people to know your work in terms of writing? That is first thing. The second thing when it comes is how now, with the coming of so many things, it has become really easy to get started. You can start your blog on Quora, you can start a Facebook page, you can write an article on LinkedIn, even with websites like WordPress, Wix. You can actually start a website in, let's say, 5 minutes. It's that easy. It's that easy. So how you want to do it, the part is clear. The third thing is, start taking small steps. So, like, for example, this is a problem that people have with reading also. They say that, I cannot sit for 30 minutes, 45 minutes in one go. So how do I read? It feels boring. So start with 10 minutes, start with 5 minutes, try to write one paragraph first. Let's say for one week, keep a target that I would be writing just one paragraph. Eventually increase it. This is a concept which is called as progressive overload. Like when you go to a gym, you start with 5 kg for one week, then you go to 7.5, then 10. So gradually you would not realize, but you would be lifting 15 to 20 kgs. So even this is how the process of writing is. Start small, and then over a period of time, keep growing. And if you have obviously love for writing, it will eventually come out. So that is one advice that I would give.
That's amazing. And Nidhi ma'am?
I think the single most important thing
Sorry.
to become an author or to write books is to have a very very strong story, and a very very original story. I think that is the biggest single most important thing that you need. And then it doesn't matter, how you tell your story, because you've seen these amazing authors coming up these days, like Benjamin, and then you have Hansa Savendra Shekhar, who have been telling stories in such an original way. It's just basically I remember chatting with Hansa about it, and he told me that, I just, whatever I'm thinking, I just type it down. I'm not structuring sentences or writing paragraphs or, framing story, because his story itself is so good and so strong and so beautiful that it really doesn't matter. So I think having a story is very very important. Like, look, telling what is this something that you really want to tell the world? Is it something that's very close to your heart?
That's amazing. And Vibha ma'am?
Yeah. So, my advice to the aspiring authors or the writers is to start writing now, whether irrespective of fictional or non fictional, you must have to start writing, and you must have to adopt the trends of the ebooks, the trends of the social media, and the self publication. If you are adopting all the trends, then definitely you can the path will be easy to get the title of the author or the writers, because we have the different platforms and we can easily access each and everything. Like, if you are starting 200 words on the LinkedIn, and if you are doing consistently for 1 year 2 year, definitely you will get the various opportunity. So you must have to harness the available medium. You don't need to put efforts or the investment. You have to invest only 30 minutes in a day. So in 1 or 2 year, definitely you will get something. So just start. This is my advice. And don't think, okay, the people are not reading. Okay, you are not for writing for others in the initial period. You are writing for yourself, to understand what is your niche, what you want to write, and why do you want to write. So just start writing and practice it, hone your skill, hone your voice. This is my advice.
That's an amazing advice, ma'am. And lastly, Richa ma'am?
Yeah. So my advice is, like, whenever I see the younger kids out there and whenever they see my book or anybody's book who they have loved in the past, so they'll be like, so how do you write this much? How do you get it published? How do you get it marketed? And all those questions. So my answer to them is that you are not going to write 60,000 words in a day, right? So my advice to all the younger generation is, you are not going to overwrite anything. Don't overwrite. Don't overexplain. Don't overthink about anything. If you have a story in your mind, if you have the creative zeal to write it, then go start writing it, and don't think about whether you are going to become an established author or you are going to become a bestseller. Don't have those thoughts in your mind. If you are good at writing and you know that you have the ability to tell the stories, then you are definitely going to be an author one day. But don't plan it right now that okay, next immediate day I have to come up with the same person. So what the younger generation does basically is they try to imitate others. Okay, I have to be like them, I have to be holding a book in my hand after say X days, and they create a deadline in their mind, and then they try to start to think like them, and then they in their pseudo imagination they make an ambition out of nothing. So please don't do that. Don't overshare, don't overthink, don't become over creative, and just be yourself. If you have a good niche, if you have a good story, if you have good creativity, you are going to rule the world. And that's the underlying statement. Don't ever give a single thought about it that okay, I'm not going to achieve that, I'm not gonna. So, and yeah, lastly, the medium. So see, we are in 2022 right now. There are different mediums. 2022, there will be like a hell lot of other mediums. So it's not important like how you are going to reach out to people. The first question or the first statement that you should be looking at: why are you doing it? If you have the strong why, the how will automatically come up. And the another thing which I have learned over a time is like you write books because nobody listens in this world. So that is the reason you write books, right? So make sure like if somebody is not going to listen you but to read your book, then the story has to be killer. So make ensure that the power of content is there. So if I'm going to invest time, maybe even reading introduction of yours, it should be worth my time. So it should be worth anybody's of your time. So if you are going to invest time in writing even a 10 pages or say 10 liners, make sure it's like very different, unique, and it portrays you. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you, ma'am. And with that, we've come to an end of our roundtable. I thank you all for coming here. We've had several incredible conversations today. I'm sure, we had differing opinions, but it was really fun to hear. And as for the viewers, please tune in next week. We'll have our startup CEOs here, and they'll teach you a little about how to get your own tech startup and what experience they went through. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for viewing.
Thank you.
Shaswat,
Thank
can
you
you
so
end
much.
this